Deputy Speaker. The drought may feel like a long way away for city dwellers, but for many people in my electorate of Macquarie, on the fringe of Sydney, it's very close to home. We might only be 70 kilometres from Sydney's CBD, but we have around 500 businesses in the agricultural sector employing between them around 1,000 people. And that includes cattle producers, the orchardists, vegetable and produce growers. We've also got Western Sydney University and the Hawkesbury campus with its focus on agriculture and innovation in agriculture. So this drought, which people are saying will soon be the worst drought since European settlement, impacts in a number of ways. It impacts directly on local farmers who are coping with less water and higher costs, and that's affecting their production and their profitability. It affects the businesses that supply those farmers, who are much less likely to be upgrading tractors and equipment in difficult times, and they're cutting costs where they can. And so it flows on through the whole local economy. When you drive past paddocks and dams every day, it means there's also a greater awareness. And of course, everyone appreciates that things are so much tougher across the ranges. There's certainly nothing much positive coming from forecasters about rain throughout summer, and there is therefore huge empathy for the farming communities who are suffering. And the government didn't need to spend $190,000 on an empathy plan to make that happen, as it did with the Inland Rail project. People do understand. There is real sympathy for the plight of farmers and little sympathy for a government that likes taking photos with farmers, but whose claims on drought funding sometimes just don't stack up. I think the best example of that is that the Prime Minister keeps banging on about his $7 billion drought package. But what we've learned is that $5 billion of that is locked away in a fund for another 10 years, and that only $100 million a year is going to be spent. So that's a $100 million plan, not a $5 billion amount to be spent, and the other $2 billion is actually loans. So I really think the Prime Minister has to be a bit more upfront about what is actually being provided to people. And you know, I've listened with interest to Senate estimates on this future drought fund. It's a fund. It's designed to fund research and other things that are really worthwhile doing. There is no doubt about it, but it's not actually providing immediate support to farmers and their communities. And it won't start until the 1st of July next year. So the question really has to be asked, what are people going to do until then? And that is why we will be supporting these extensions and improvements to the farm household support program, because they are terribly needed, but it isn't enough. One of the reasons some communities are missing out on drought funding is that they don't have quite enough people involved in agriculture. And I was stunned to hear that the formula that's applied is being supplied so rigorously that you're required to have a minimum of 17% of your community employed in agriculture. Now, there are communities that are dreadfully drought affected all around Australia, but they're missing out on this because they have 16.9% of their population employed in agriculture. Now, communities' needs to be understood, not for an inflexible percentage to be placed. The government really needs to think about how to make this the support packages that they have available and accessible. So we do support this increase in farm assistance, and because we do believe there are people who need immediate support, but we also need that longer-term planning and action. In terms of immediate support, it is extraordinary how my community has stepped up to provide immediate support for where they see a need. Groups like Hawkesbury Hay Runners, which was set up by Dan Matthews and Josh Stevenson, are contributing to the immediate response. Earlier this year, their volunteer truck drivers delivered 50 round bales to Moree to help out, and they've been collaborating with Animal Welfare League in New South Wales to provide some really hands-on practical support. And City Slickers Appeal, another Hawkesbury charity, has been active for around 18 months after Wade and a group of Ebenezer friends realised that they could help. There was something they could do. Their work was recognised in a Hawkesbury Australia Day award earlier this year. When I spoke to Wade, he said he realised just how hard things were in the bush, and he simply wanted to show country people that city slickers did actually care about what was happening past the mountains. Ever since then, Wade and his team have been going about their business just trying to help as many communities and farmers as they can, delivering bales, food and all sorts of supplies regularly to the bush, and they're really well supported by the very generous Hawkesbury community in which they live. These are people who can see that there is more to be done, in spite of the Prime Minister's claims that it's all under control. In the absence of rain, a promised dam just ain't going to cut it. And, you know, dams are great when it is raining, but we're kind of beyond that point. What we're missing is a comprehensive approach to tackling the impacts of the current drought and then the longer-term plan to manage the changing conditions that farmers are clearly facing. The National Farmers Federation thinks there needs to be a plan, and Nationals thinks there needs to be a plan. It's just that the government can't quite see that things are at a point where, in fact, you do need to reach out and work with a whole range of people, and guess what? That includes us, working with us across this parliament to have a long-term strategy in place. One of the things we need to see is the report on the drought by Coordinator General, Major General Stephen Day, which the Prime Minister refuses to release. That is mind-boggling. He tells us that it's the basis for decisions government is making, yet we're not privy to what is in that report. Keeping secret the reports you've received isn't a way to work collaboratively or for there to be any confidence in the decisions that the government is making. Nor is bluffing your way through saying we're doing heaps when those on the ground are having a very different experience. That's why we've proposed a drought cabinet modelled on the war cabinets chaired by Menzies and Curtin and also Churchill. Creating a forum that allows decisions to be made on a bipartisan basis, because these are dark days for farmers, farming communities and the communities that rely on them. That's also going to flow through to every person who buys food. It's only a matter of time before the crunch is really felt. We can't wait for that point. This situation goes beyond what we've seen in the past with drought, and it requires a comprehensive and urgent response now. And, Deputy Speaker, I'd just like to address one final point. It's often said by those on the other side that our side doesn't understand the bush. We don't understand farming communities. That claim is made often, as are many others that are simply not based on any evidence or fact. And I just want to put on the record that as a small business operator, my very first client was New South Wales farmers. Now, this is back in the 1990s. And for 25 years, in the course of working in my business as a media and presentation consultant, I was privileged to work with a multitude of agricultural businesses. Sometimes they came to me because things were really tough in their sector and they needed help. Other times things were going great guns and they wanted to spread the word on what they were doing, and they needed some skills to be able to do that. But what it gave me was the opportunity to really see inside some of the bigger agricultural businesses, but also the smaller producers, the individuals who are there working on their properties. And I think it really does this parliament a disservice that those opposite think that they have all the knowledge about farming and rural communities. You know, I live in a community that there are parts of my community you look at and go, this is absolutely remote wilderness. There are other parts where you go, this is rural agriculture. So I really, really urge those opposite, work with us. We do have some knowledge, some understanding, and what's more, we have the goodwill to find a way through this really difficult problem, which is not your problem alone. It's our country's problem, and it's something that we should all be working together to find a resolution. Now, there's been a lot of talk about what the solutions might be. The best way to come to an agreement on these, because nothing is going to happen in a single term of parliament, anything that will really make a difference in the long run is going to require ongoing support. You can't have governments chopping and changing at will. So I'd really urge you to, set your pride aside, come and work with us. We actually really want to help, and we have Australia's best interests at heart.